I don't know what Mark Cuban wants in terms of a paper trail. It would have been a lot easier and a lot safer if he was trying to circumvent the CBA to just buy more carbon credits. They were almost all margin, so they would have created the cash immediately to pay KL2.
Aspiration keeps on raising money from Team Ballmer along the direct point in the timeline at which Kawhi Leonard is due his quarterly payments.
Early on Thursday morning, Pablo Torre just dropped another nuclear bomb on the NBA, and I mean nuclear. We're not talking about $48 million anymore, and we're not talking about Steve Ballmer getting conned like he claimed on ESPN.
These were guys who committed fraud. Look, they conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
They conned me.
Honestly, seriously, was anyone buying this? Guys, we are now talking about $118 million flowing from the Los Angeles Clippers to a dying company, with every single payment timed exactly when Kawhi Leonard needed to get paid. And Pablo Torre isn't just making these claims, he has the receipts, literal receipts, bank statements, deposition transcripts, text messages from Kawhi's Uncle Dennis, letters signed by the Clippers CFO. This isn't speculation anymore. This is documented evidence of the biggest salary cap scandal in NBA history. But here's the craziest part. The FBI already knows all of this. The federal investigators have been talking to Pablo's sources. Joe Sandberg, the guy at the center of this, pled the Fifth Amendment when asked about the Clippers deal. He's admitting to wire fraud, but won't talk about Steve Ballmer. So in this video, I'm gonna bring you an update as to what Pablo Torre just uncovered, because this changes everything. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NBA news to your device. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. My winning streak wasn't going to last forever, and this time it was primarily because the Miami Dolphins featured Ollie Gordon more in their game against the Bills. He literally poached a touchdown from Devon Achane. But if you followed my picks on my Instagram story, you'd see my Instagram story pick hit for $500. And now I'm ready to use my Patrick Mahomes free square to potentially turn $25 to over $700. To take advantage of this promo, sign up for Prize Picks using my promo code microphone and tail this insane play. I have the Patrick Mahomes free square being paired with him getting over 40 rush yards, because he's been over 40 over the past couple of games, and the Giants have a very underrated pass rush with Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau. I think Mahomes is going to pick up at least 40 on the ground. I have Daniel Jones destroying the paltry Tennessee Titans through the air, and CeeDee Lamb getting at least 100 receiving yards. Now, if all of these hit, $25 turns into over $700. Now, I give away some picks on Instagram. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/microphone, and I partnered with Fantasy Aces to create a Discord server where they're giving you multiple plays a day and turning a profit. All links are in the description down below, and thank you Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? For those who missed our last video, here's what we knew. Pablo Torre spent 7 months investigating and found Kawhi got $48 million through a fraudulent company called Aspiration that Steve Ballmer invested in. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Pablo just revealed the full timeline, and it's so obvious at this point that it's insulting to try to convince someone otherwise. Let me walk you through this step by step, because the pattern is undeniable. On September 2021, Steve Ballmer invests $50 million in Aspiration at $11 per share. The company immediately burns through the money on garbage, legal fees, marketing, executive bonuses. By early 2022, they're already broke. On April 1st, 2022, the Clippers wire $3 million to Aspiration for carbon credits. A little bit more on carbon credits later. 3 days later, Kawhi Leonard signs his secret $28 million deal with Aspiration. The same day, the Clippers wire another $32 million to Aspiration. Could you think about that timing for a second? Kawhi Leonard signs on April 4th, and that exact same day, $32 million flows from the Los Angeles Clippers to Aspiration to pay Kawhi Leonard. Here's where it gets insane. 2 months later, on June 14th, 2022, Pablo got his hands on an actual letter. It has the Clippers logo at the top. It's signed by the Clippers chief financial officer. It authorizes the withdrawal of $20.9 million from an escrow account to fund carbon projects through Aspiration. Exactly 16 days later, Kawhi gets his first payment from Aspiration on June 30th, 2022.
You see that money was spent quite quickly.
Now here's the genius, or if you want to say really the stupidity of this scheme. Aspiration was selling carbon credits at insane markups.
They brokered these sales of carbon credits on the brokering business. Typically, it costs about 10 to 20 cents to plant a tree. Aspiration was charging the Red Sox and Meta and Drake $1.
Whew, that's nice.
So when the Clippers bought carbon credits, they were basically just handing Aspiration free money that could then flow to Kawhi Leonard. Pablo Torre, a former senior executive in Aspiration's finance department, said this when asked about the carbon credit scheme.
They did that. So I mean, he's right. He's completely correct. That would be one of the avenues that you would use to circumvent the cap.
Think about what Steve Ballmer said on ESPN about why he partnered with Aspiration.
This is a company that I got to know through them approaching us about a sponsorship deal. Family and I were super keen to do work to stem climate change. We think that's an important thing. I was in the process of even changing the design of Intuit Dome so that we could be carbon neutral. And then we meet this company that focuses in on an aspect of carbon neutrality.
But here's the problem. The Intuit Dome wasn't opening until August of 2024. They were buying carbon credits for a building that didn't exist yet. As Dan Le Batard said on his podcast,
I prefer the idea that the rush should be because the world is burning and Earth is going to be destroyed, but that's not the rush. It's that Uncle Dennis is on the phone and we're late with our payments. Allegedly.
the total the Clippers prepaid for carbon credits in spring 2022 alone, $56.4 million for a building that wouldn't exist for 2 more years. By December of 2022, Aspiration was dying. They couldn't pay their employees. Pablo got text messages between finance team members.
So this is a text message I got from a colleague in all caps. Ballmer put money in, question mark, exclamation point, to which I responded, it's just honestly so insane. This whole thing is just so insane.
So in other words, smelled fishy at the time.
Seattle Fish Market.
But Kawhi was owed his quarterly $1.75 million payment.
There's the fucking money.
So what happens? Well, on December 6, 2022, Dennis Wong, Ballmer's college roommate and the Clippers minority owner, wires $1.99 million to Aspiration. This is his first ever investment in the company. His daughter worked there, so he knew it was collapsing, but he invested anyway. 9 days later, on December 15, 2022, Kawhi gets his $1.75 million payment. The same day, Aspiration lays off 20% of their staff. A former Aspiration employee told Pablo, "It really looks like the Clippers, through Dennis Wong, put in $2 million in order for Aspiration to be able to make the $1.75 million payment to Kawhi." Now, here's where things get juicy. I'm sure at this point you guys know that Mark Cuban has been suspiciously defending Steve Ballmer like crazy. Most other owners aren't really talking about this. Everyone's keeping a quiet mouth about it. Hell, we haven't even heard Kawhi Leonard say anything about this. But Mark Cuban has been more vocal than anyone else. He's been defending Ballmer like his life depends on it, tweeting thousands of words, going on podcasts, starting Twitter beefs with Pablo Torre, and people are all asking the same question. Why? Why are you defending Steve Ballmer so hard? I mean, one tweet maybe I'd understand, but we're talking about a man that's literally writing essays on his X account currently. Let's talk about 2014, because that's when something really suspicious happened with Dirk Nowitzki. In the summer of 2014, Dirk was a free agent. The Lakers offered him a massive contract. Reports say around $92 million. The Rockets were also in play with a max offer. Dirk was still playing at an elite level, coming off of a season where he averaged 21 points per game. Any team would have paid him huge money. Could you imagine the amount of money he would have made in Houston alone? $92 million, you're still in Texas, no state income tax. But what does Dirk decide to sign? This man signed for 3 years and $25 million instead of $92 million. I understand the hometown discount, but bro, it's never for a third of your value. You're never giving anyone 66% discounts. Unless if you're seeing like one of those shady courses being sold sold online. At the time, no one thought anything of it. Oh, Dirk's loyal. He wants to help the team build a winner. Look at Chandler Parsons. He could help us get back to the NBA Finals. The Dallas Mavericks actually thought that. I'd be even more frustrated if I was Dirk Nowitzki, passing up on $67 million just so my team could sign Chandler Parsons of all people. Now, in 2014, the exact same year Dirk takes this massive pay cut, a documentary about him called Nowitzki, The Perfect Shot gets released. And guess who buys the distribution rights? Magnolia Pictures. Guess who owns Magnolia Pictures? Mark Cuban. So let me get this straight. Dirk leaves $67 million on the table to stay with Mark Cuban's team. And coincidentally, Mark Cuban's movie company buys his documentary for an undisclosed amount that same year. Come on, guys. Like, this is the exact same playbook as Kawhi Leonard in Aspiration. But instead of a fake tree planting company, it's a movie distribution deal. And this isn't the only time Dirk took less money. Look at his entire career with Mark Cuban. In 2006, he gave up a potential $99 million by signing an extension early. In 2010, he took less than the max when he could have gotten way more. In 2014, he signed for $25 million instead of $92 million. And from 2016 to 2019, he kept signing minimum deals when other teams would have paid more. The total left on the table for Dirk's career is $194 million. I don't care who you are. Nobody loves a team so much that they'll leave over $100 million on the table, unless if you're Jalen Brunson, and there's nothing shady with Jalen Brunson's deal. Or wait, we actually have a video on that. This is just getting crazier. Mark Cuban's out here saying Steve isn't that dumb to circumvent the cap. But what if Mark Cuban's really saying, hey, we all do this, just you guys caught Steve Ballmer. Now back to Pablo's bombshell. He got the transcript of Joe Sandberg's deposition from October 2024. Sandberg was being sued for $278 million in fraud, and the deposition is wild.
Aspiration very publicly and promptly had a number of celebrity investors. Is that correct?
Yes.
Including Drake?
Yes.
Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes.
Steve Ballmer?
Yes.
Former CEO of Microsoft, owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, at one point, Aspiration had a deal with the Clippers, did they not?
I assert my Fifth Amendment rights.
Wait, hold on. You admit to everything else, but the Clippers deal makes you plead the fifth? It gets even better. When asked who invested in late 2022 when the company was dying, Sandberg says,
did you manage to get any new investors into Aspiration at the end of 2022 and the start of 2023?
Yes.
Who?
Oh, Steve Ballmer.
Don't look at me.
I wasn't looking at you to answer, sorry. Let's see, Steve Ballmer, Dennis Wong versus his entity. I can't recall the name of his entity.
Even the criminal's lawyer doesn't want to touch this. That's how bad it is. March 2023 is when this gets absolutely insane. By now, everyone knows Aspiration is cooked. Forbes published an article calling it a floundering fintech's risky reboot. The FBI is investigating. They've laid off hundreds of employees. Court documents show that Aspiration lost $772.5 million between 2019 and 2022. The company that was supposed to merge with them had 90% of its shareholders bail out. And what does Steve Ballmer do? He invests another $10 million. He invests at $23 per share. That's more than double the $11 per share he paid in 2021 when the company was supposedly healthy. Pablo's source inside Aspiration said they had to give Ballmer full financial disclosures showing how screwed the company was. And he still invested at double the price. One source told Pablo,
Why is Steve Ballmer backing a huge historic raise for Aspiration? Also, what was the main motivation for such a large raise? Because from inside Aspiration, we see like the glitz and the glam of the celebrities that are posting, but from the finance side, accounts receivable were wild.
Now, Pablo got 3 Aspiration executives to go on the record refuting their former CEO's claims. These aren't anonymous sources. These are Roger Aginian, who's a former CFO, Michael Ciccarelli, a former chief legal officer, and Eric Anderson, a former CTO. They said the Leonard deal was presented to the company as a completed arrangement and executed by Mr. Cherney despite significant objections from members of the senior management team. The team expressed concerns at the time regarding the high cost of the agreement and its lack of alignment with Aspiration's brand and business strategy. The Leonard deal was presented to the company as a completed arrangement and executed by Mr. Cherney despite significant objections from members of the senior management team. The team expressed concerns at the time regarding the high cost of the agreement and its lack of alignment with Aspiration's Aspiration's brand and business strategy. The CEO's response? He claimed attorney-client privilege and wouldn't discuss it. But then he accidentally admitted that the general counsel spent months going back and forth with Leonard's team. Pablo got a screenshot of a text from Uncle Dennis to Joe Sandberg. Uncle Dennis wrote, "Good morning, Joe. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Just a heads up, things are still dragging. Mike has the contract for about 14 days now. Haven't heard back." This text was about Kawhi's additional $20 million equity deal, and it shows Uncle Dennis was personally involved in negotiating these payments. Not Kawhi, not his official agents, but Uncle Dennis. Remember, this is the same Uncle Dennis who asked the Raptors for part ownership of the Maple Leafs and asked the Lakers for a house and a private jet. When those teams said no, Kawhi Leonard ended up with the Clippers and a $48 million sponsorship. This might be the most damning part. Adam Silver initially said he'd never heard of Aspiration before Pablo's report.
It was news to me. I'd frankly never heard of the company Aspiration before, and I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi or anything around engagement with the Los Angeles Clippers, so it was all new to me.
But Pablo found the actual sponsorship contract.
Section 15.16a, this agreement and all of sponsors' rights and the team parties' obligations herein are subject to NBA rules and regulations. This agreement and any amendment hereto must be submitted prior to its execution for NBA's approval and shall not be effective or enforceable until it is expressly approved by the NBA.
When confronted about this at a conference, Silver suddenly changes his story. Now he says he meant he hadn't heard about it in the context of the accusations.
If I said I never heard of it, I meant in the context of the accusations here.
So the NBA approved a $300 million sponsorship deal where Aspiration was paying the Clippers $7.5 million a year, while the Clippers were secretly funneling money back to pay Kawhi Leonard $7 million a year through the same company. And Adam Silver wants us to believe he didn't notice? Silver did say my powers are very broad, including financial penalties, draft picks, suspensions, etc. That etc. is doing a lot of work here. So let's add it all up, because Pablo did the math.
Ballmer himself put in $50 million in September of 2021.
The Clippers, less than 3 months before they prepaid that $21 million, had already prepaid $3 million on April 1st. And then on April 4th, that Kawhi signed the $28 million KL to Aspire contract, the Clippers also wired Aspiration $32 million. June 14th, 2022 is when this letter is sent. This letter that you just read says that they're withdrawing $21 million to fund carbon projects. It brings us back to December 2022, to when Dennis Wong, again, put in $2 million into Aspiration. So March 9th, 2023, Steve Ballmer put in $10 million through his personal LLC. Aspiration keeps on raising money from Team Ballmer along the direct point in the timeline at which Kawhi Leonard is due his quarterly payments.
Every payment perfectly timed with when Kawhi needed more money. Every investment made when the company was obviously failing. Every executive who was there said it made no sense unless it was to pay Kawhi. And remember, Steve Ballmer claimed this on ESPN.
They defrauded me. They defrauded many other investors much bigger than me.
But if you're being conned, why do you keep sending them more money? Why invest at double the price when the company's dying? And here's where it gets crazier. Mark Cuban is getting very desperate. As I'm recording this, Mark Cuban just responded to Pablo Torre on X, and bro, it's something. This man is writing a research report trying to defend Steve Ballmer, but honestly, he might have just made things worse. Let me break down what Cuban said and why it's actually more damning than helpful. Cuban starts by saying, "Pablo, glad I could help. Will you now admit that you and your sources who said it was common knowledge the $50 million was for cap circumvention were incorrect?" Bro, what? How does anything you just said prove that at all whatsoever? Cuban then tries to explain the timing. You focus too much on the dates. A contract paid quarterly is always going to be close to any investment. Most rounds have a closing date, usually the end of the month. Hold up, so Cuban is saying it's a coincidence that every single time Kawhi Leonard needed to get paid, the money just magically appeared from Team Ballmer? That Dennis Wong just happened to invest his first $2 million 9 days before Kawhi Leonard's payment in a dying company? That's not a coincidence, Mark, that's a pattern. Then Cuban goes into this long explanation about carbon credits, saying they're not like buying a physical product. You have to plant the trees first, get them verified, blah, blah, blah. But here's what he's missing, or pretending to miss. The Clippers paid paid $56 million for carbon credits for a building that didn't exist yet. That's not normal business. That's money laundering 101. But here's where Cuban really tells on himself. He says, your source, when asked why they didn't uncover the fraud, who happens to be the senior people who signed your letter. See the circular reporting you are doing there? Mark, my guy, that's not circular reporting. That's multiple executives all independently saying the same thing. This deal made no sense unless it was to pay Kawhi. The CFO, the chief legal officer, the CTO, they all went on the record saying this was suspicious. That's called corroboration, not circular reporting. Then Mark Cuban drops this gem. Sandberg controlled everything. He was the one that spent the money however he wanted. No one else has any say. So let me get this straight. Cuban's defense is that Sandberg, a known fraudster who pled guilty to wire fraud, had total control over where Ballmer's money went. And Ballmer, the guy who ran Microsoft, just kept sending money to a criminal without asking questions? That's your defense? But the most revealing part is when Cuban says, you have your sports brain on. But this really isn't about sports at all. It's a story about a guy who defrauded a lot of people and whose only hope of staying out of jail was this merger happening. Mark, you just admitted it. If Sandberg's only hope of staying out of jail was this merger happening, and Ballmer knew the company was failing, why did Ballmer invest another $10 million in March of 2023? Why invest at double the share price? Unless the investment wasn't really about making money. Unless it was about making sure that Kawhi Leonard got paid. And here's my favorite part. Cuban mentions that KPMG, their auditor, resigned. Their auditor resigned, Mark. You know what makes auditors resign? When they find something so bad that they don't want their name on it. And Cuban is using this as his defense? He also mentions that Sandberg and his co-conspirator put in $56 million to show Ballmer the merger would happen. So Cuban's admitting Sandberg was lying to Ballmer to get more money, and Ballmer fell for it. The 9th richest man in the world got conned by a guy that everyone knew was shady? Come on, Mark, you're trying so hard to defend Steve Ballmer that you're either making him look impossibly guilty or absurdly stupid. And come on, everybody knows Steve Ballmer isn't stupid. But the funniest part is Cuban ends by telling Pablo to spend as much as Le Batard's money as possible on a securities lawyer. Why, Mark? Why do you care so much about this? Why are you writing 1,000-word defenses on X at 2 in the morning? Unless you're worried that if they really investigate this, they might start looking at other teams. They might start asking about that 2014 documentary deal with Dirk Nowitzki. They might wonder why you're so invested in defending a system where billionaires can pay players under the table. Cuban's response is exactly what you'd expect from someone who's nervous. He's throwing everything at the wall. Carbon credit explanations, attacking sources, claiming coincidences, blaming everything on Sandberg. But none of it explains why $118 million flowed from the Los Angeles Clippers to a dying company exactly when Kawhi Leonard needed to be paid. Look, after Cuban's response, I'm even more convinced that something shady happened. You don't write essays defending someone unless you have skin in the game. You don't spend hours on Twitter arguing about carbon credits unless you're worried about something. And the facts remain. $118 million went from Team Ballmer to Aspiration. Every payment was timed with Kawhi Leonard's payment schedule. 3 executives went on record saying it's suspicious. Sandberg pled the fifth about the Clippers deal. The auditor resigned. Adam Silver changed his story, and Mark Cuban can't stop defending it. This isn't going away. Pablo Torre has the receipts. The FBI has the evidence, and Mark Cuban's desperate defense just made everyone else more suspicious. This story is far from over. In fact, Cuban's response might have just opened up a whole new chapter, because now everyone is asking, what is Mark Cuban so afraid of? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.